We start with the Boston Marathon bombings. Two big questions still linger this morning. Who did it and why?
That's exactly what FBI agents are trying to find out as they're now in charge of the investigation into these deadly bombings. Here's what we do know for you this morning. 3 people are dead, sadly, including an 8-year-old boy. 17 others are still in critical condition, and a total of 144 people were hurt, some of them, about 10, losing limbs in the blast. These 2 bombs that exploded right near the finish line, they were about 100 yards apart, and they went off somewhere within about 16 seconds of each other. They knocked down people, they shattered windows, and they sent those dense plumes of smoke rising over the streets.
We have multiple people down here.
And everybody's running in, not knowing when the next one could happen, but they ran in. They tore down those fences. They jumped in, they helped the people. It was just unbelievable.
A senior U.S. intelligence official says investigators found 2 unexploded bombs in the area, and they were safely disarmed. Federal investigators say so far no one nor group is claiming responsibility for the attacks. Now, in the last half hour, we told you that a group from New Mexico, a bunch of runners, are now waiting to try to get home from Boston.
Yeah, and many of them do not have their IDs. They left them behind in their bags while fleeing when the bombings went off.
It sounded like a big piece of metal or something crashing against other metal, and or thunder.
Albuquerque marathoner Lauren Woolitz was part of a group of runners that went to Boston to compete in the marathon. Now, Woolitz was 2 blocks south of the explosion, and what should have been a day to celebrate quickly turned into a day of making sure fellow runners were okay.
So I wanted to talk about the highs and the lows of the running part, and then to finish that conversation and to come back to what's currently going on and still hearing the sirens outside it's jarring. It's 2 things going on at once in parallel.
Now, that was another runner that was part of the group, Beth Ulibari. She crossed the finish line at 4 hours and 4 minutes. That really was just 5 minutes before one of the blasts. She was not injured. Russia and other countries, even municipalities, have announced that they will join cities across the globe in beefing up security following these bombings.
In fact, critical response teams are now in New York City. Security is getting bumped up at hotels and other places there that attract a lot of people. In Washington, the Secret Service actually closed down Pennsylvania Avenue that runs there in front of the White House. And police in San Francisco are increasing patrols in crowded areas of that city.
We're paying attention to all the public source outlets, and all of our task force agents are paying attention. We want to keep San Francisco safe.
And in England, police are already reviewing security plans for this weekend because the London Marathon is set for Sunday. Well, make sure you stay with KRQE News 13 and our website, krqe.com, to get the latest and continuing coverage of the bombings and the folks from New Mexico who were caught up in them.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture has finally set a date to inspect a controversial horse meat plant in Roswell. An attorney for the Valley Meat Company says the inspection has been scheduled for the 23rd. The company has been working toward slaughtering horses since last year, but red tape and a tremendous amount of opposition pushed back the inspection. Now, owner Rick De Los Santos says the move will provide jobs and help deal with the high number of abused horses in New Mexico and in the U.S. If the Roswell plant passes inspection, the horse meat will be sold overseas. And opening statements are expected in a trial involving a drug cartel and a money laundering operation that included racehorses at Ruidoso Downs. Jose Trevino Morales, a brother of 2 top leaders of the Los Zetas cartel, allegedly hid drug money by buying quarter horses. Now, one of those horses, Mr. Piloto, won the $1 million All-American race in Ruidoso back in 2010. Now, an affidavit says that after the race, one of the Morales brothers bragged that he had fixed it. A federal raid in Ruidoso Downs was part of an investigation which led to charges against Morales and others in this case. The trial, by the way, being held in Austin, Texas.
A middle school teacher in Rio Rancho is now getting ready to go on trial, accused of roughing up a student. Yesterday, a grand jury ruled there is enough evidence to send this man, Ken Boyd, to trial on 1 charge of child abuse. He was arrested back in February after 2 kids there at Rio Rancho Middle School said Boyd abused them in class. One student said Boyd grabbed him by the neck and forced him to the ground. Another said Boyd grabbed him by the shirt and pushed him into a table. Ken Boyd is still on paid leave from the school district. And Bernalillo County's district attorney's office could decide as early as today if a teacher in Albuquerque will get charged with child abuse. Investigators say John Dominguez kicked one student, pushed another on purpose when he tried to break up a fight at John Adams Middle School last week. Dominguez denies intentionally hurting anyone. The district attorney's office has the case and will decide if Mr. Dominguez will face any charges. Well, 5:35, we are finally getting a glimpse of a bill that could drastically change this country's immigration laws.
It'll be introduced in the U.S. Senate today, and we know that it will likely give millions of people who will come to the U.S. illegally a path to citizenship. Plus, it'll also apparently beef up border security. Our News 13's David Romero is live in the Newsplex with more. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Elizabeth. It's still a ways off, but if it's passed, it may become a way to provide an easier path to citizenship for people who've come to the U.S. illegally. Still, there would be many hurdles on the way to becoming legal. Now, background checks as well as paying fines and fees for those becoming citizens are all part of the legislation. Immigrants wouldn't have to come up with the money overnight. According to Senate leaders working on the bill, it would be a 13-year path to becoming a citizen. In the meantime, writing in the bill indicated border security would be heightened along with employers having to check the status of workers. There is still a lot of debate that will have to go on about the bill in Congress before it hits the president's desk. Groups like the New Mexico Immigration Law Center in Albuquerque are just one of two who say they directly assist immigrants in applying for benefits.
We only have 2 full-time attorneys, so for us it will be a real challenge trying to figure out how to assist as many people as possible if immigration reform does happen.
New Mexico's delegation in Washington is still split down party lines with where they sit on the new reform. The state's 4 Democrats are behind immigration reform, while New Mexico's lone Republican Steve Pearce says the reform is a good starting point, but doesn't want to see it become a way to make illegal entry a path to citizenship. Elizabeth, back to you.
David, thank you. Statistics from the Pew Research Center show that there are about 85,000 undocumented immigrants right here in New Mexico.